Hey guys, good morning. Welcome back. All right, let's look at some news. Okay, so here's a tweet from an Iraqi citizen, and according to their tweets on Twitter, the citizens are only giving the government until October 25th to make reforms and hold killers of protesters accountable. Okay, so again, they're basically giving Parliament until October 25th to start the reforms. Okay, just wanted to show that to you. Let's look at the next one. All right, it says an agreement to settle the electoral districts parliamentary. The blocs agreed on this formula and will pass by a majority. So, according to this article, as of pretty sure, okay, it says a deputy of the House of Representatives revealed on Saturday an agreement to resolve the electoral districts within the election law. The head of the Rafidun bloc in the House of Representatives, the general trend in the House of Representatives is to agree in the districts from 3 to 7 departments according to each government, noting that there are objections by some of these blocs. The session on the 10th of this month, so that's next Saturday, guys. They're going to have a session of Parliament next Saturday to vote on the election law and complete it. Here's what I will say. You guys are seeing another pattern right before you, and it's confirming what I've told you. Okay? Pattern was I kind of told you some things, pretty much things that had to do with things that are related and linked to reforms couldn't be started. You're seeing that pattern. They're hiding the 2020 budget from you. They're hiding the reforms from you, both. Okay? And notice how they're not even able to start them. That's why they're hiding them from you. So last week was a dead week, guys. This is going to be a dead week too. It's going to be very quiet. You won't see anything. Okay? All you're going to just, next week will be quiet. Just next Saturday, they'll complete this election law. And then hopefully after next weekend, we see something where they start maybe talking about the 2020 budget and the reforms again somewhere. Hopefully we see some chatter on that, not this week, but after the 10th. Okay, that's what we're looking for. So let's move on. Let's see what the next article says. A free dinar. An economist talks about a move that establishes a global demand for Iraqi currency. The Economist wrote on an explanation about some countries deleting zeros from their currency and the possibility of applying them in Iraq, while referring to the possibility of making the Iraqi currency strong and has a global demand, is what he described as the free dinar. Iran will soon delete 4 zeros from its currency and convert it to the rial. Guys, let's talk about this for a second. There's 2 ways you can delete zeros. If Iran, research that Iran has very high inflation, that's why they would delete zeros from the currency to reduce and ease the inflation. It essentially devalues the currency. Okay? Iraq's different. I recently checked Iraq's inflation. I think it was down to 0.5%. It was very low. So in Iraq, they're not deleting. In Iraq, they will not be deleting zeros off the notes. They will delete zeros off the rate. But when they delete zeros off the rate, that essentially does make it 1-to-1 with the dollar. So once they do make it 1-to-1 with the dollar, that makes the notes too valuable. So they actually at that point have to bring out new notes. They're not necessarily taking zeros off notes. They just two different currencies will coexist together for a period of time, smaller notes and larger notes. But again, they have to bring out smaller notes because the currency will have too high of a value. Okay, so that's all it means, guys. It's all based on inflation. And have completed a legal series for that. Excuse me. That the time will be $100 will equal 3 toman. Anyway, this part's about. And it says, as a clarification received by Yes Iraq, he added a digital deception previously carried out by the United States, Italy, Turkey. United States deleted its dollar currencies with zeros against the previous European currencies, the French franc, the German mark, the English pound. It canceled a 10,000 currency and the 1,000 currency and withdrew it from banking personnel circulation forever. It continued. Italy re-zeroed The Italian lira adjusted its value and deleted 6 zeros from it. The million lira turned into 1 lira and 100 million lira into 100 lira before it was merged with the euro currency in '02, as well as at Turkey, which converted 1 million Turkish liras into 1 lira and converted 100 million pounds, 100 Turkish liras only. He explained suddenly the Turkish currency was circulated and used abroad for circulation, and it entered Iraq and was used for dealing and the exchange rate as a store of value. And whoever used to work on the shore knows that after the Turkish currency was forgotten throughout the 90s and 80s and was an attempt to integrate Turkey with European economic values. And that the current Iraq dinar differs slightly because the Iraqi economy is consumerist, but that does not prevent it. It is possibly to apply that the use deleted Iraqi currency zeros by buying and importing industrial product lines for the manufacture of basic luxury goods as much as possible, and this will revive the exchange rate of the dinar and demand for it externally, and shrinking depletion of foreign currency to buy the most insignificant commodities and deplete the cash balance instead of facilitating official and accounting transactions, packages, storage, transportation, use of versatile metal, change and revolutionary digital currency through cards, and gain confidence internally and externally. Needs a revival, stimulation, and process in the aspect. Easy projects that are waiting for their hero below. Conceptual models for the deleted Iraqi currency, the free dinar, zeros. Iran and Iraq are discussing ways to develop bilateral relations. The ambassador in Baghdad mosques met with the Iraqi president Barham Saleh to discuss ways to develop relations between the two countries in various fields. The two sides discussed during the meeting on bilateral relations and ways to develop cooperation in all fields in the context of serving common interests. The meeting also dealt with discussion of the latest political developments in the region, the importance of reducing tensions, commitment, and dialogue to strengthening regional security and peace. The Iraqi president and the Iranian ambassador stressed the need to support the Iraqi government's measure to protect diplomatic missions, consolidate state authority and law enforcement, and considered it necessary and important to stabilize Iraq and to cross the region's crisis to achieve peace and move towards opportunities for development and joint cooperation. Ambassador Mercedi affirmed the commitment of the Islamic Republic of Iran and its support for stability in Iraq and the consolidation of economic and social ties between the two neighboring countries and peoples. Facing the financial crisis requires a roadmap. The representative of Iraq in the Union of Arab Banks confirmed that facing the financial crisis requires a roadmap to activate the private sector, while stressing that reducing the lending interest rate is subject to conditions. The government must, in the coming period, work on a clear roadmap and a clear vision in order to activate the role of the private sector and all its branches. Guys, that the private sector is a big one. And in various economic sectors in a manner that guarantees increased productivity and reduces the financial burden on the government by providing job opportunities for manpower, noting that it is necessary to work in the coming period to liberalize the banking sector. Financial burdens, Abbott added that there are a large number of solutions that the government could address in the coming period, including activating public and private partnerships in the electricity, energy, and industry agriculture sectors in a way that ensures increasing the efficiency of these institutions and also reducing the financial burden on the state treasury, and also provide the appropriate environment for foreign investment. He explained that the private and government banks, in cooperation with the central bank, must work to provide the necessary lending and financing for companies in the industrial and agriculture sectors and in a way that contributes to transformation of Iraq from a rentier economy dependent on all oil exports to an exporting country that has self-sufficiency. Interest rate. With regard to the interest rates on loans, mention that the banks rely on specific contexts and mechanisms while calculating interest margins rates and interest rates on lending as the cost of funds is taken into account. In other words, the interest paid on the deposit, where the percentage in Iraq is considered very high compared to neighboring countries in the world, which amounts to more than 7% annually on the dinar. In addition to that, cost of managing, transporting, preserving funds in Iraq is high, and in light of the high operation expenses, as well as the cost of insurance and funds according to maintain internationally accepted interest margin ratio of 2 to 3%. Iraqi banks are forced to lend at least 10% annually. He continued accordingly, and given the need to reduce the interest rates received by banks on the lending side, it is necessary to work to liberalize the banking sector and to reduce the dominance of government banks in transactions, the public sector, in order to enhance the classification of funds available to the private banking sector and to significantly reduce the cost of sources of funds. Investment. Iraq announces a plan to activate delayed projects. The National Investment Commission in the state of Iraq unveiled a plan to activate delayed projects to open another strategic one. The head of the authority said in a statement, Iraqi News Today, Saturday, that she had visited a number of investment projects that were lagging in Baghdad and the provinces with the aim of overcoming obstacles and continuing work. She pointed out to the imminent opening of investment projects in Karbala, a hospital and an airport in Basra, a hospital in Muthanna, a cement factory in Baghdad, a hospital, after the obstacles that led to the delay in their completion have been overcome. She added that the authority has prepared a plan to revive the investment process across the country and for all sectors by activating stalled projects and formulating that at the investment, financial, and technical levels. She noted that there are routine and administrative procedures hindering the completion of these projects, which called on the Commission to coordinate directively with the relevant departments and the institution to solve the problems, especially with regard to infrastructure and investment projects in the health and industry sectors. Electronic collection. While the world is moving towards using the funds of the digital economy, one of the most important components of which is the electronic payment system, the world has made great strides in this important trend with the disappearance of the use of paper currency, which has become a burden on economies due to the many faults and difficulties and challenges of their dealings. We find that Iraq is still different in this project despite its methods, largely through the initiatives of the Central Bank of Iraq and the private banking sector, which literally applied to the decisions, legislation, and instructions of the central bank in this regard. Now, private banks have full requirements for operating the electronic payment project, but what is remarkable about the tourist trips of Iraqis around the world is that you monitor most of the youth, and some families use electronic cards smoothly and maintain their flow, shopping, and other travel matters while not being exposed to fraud and thefts in a number of money exchange outlets abroad. But you do not find this phenomenon prominent in Iraq, either because of the weak promotion of the mechanism, the weak culture of dealing with electronic cards, or the lack of payment centers. What concerns us here is digital economy that is at the level of use of ministries, government institutions, especially in the fields of electronic collection, taxes, and other transactions, is still weak and does not rise to the level of the development that took place at the global level. What are the reasons or motives? Or let's call it, what are the challenges, so that no one will be angry with us? Therefore, you find a number of ministries trying to impede the project with flimsy arguments that do not deceive anyone, so they fabricate excuses and arguments and impede contracts with sober companies by imposing commissions on them that exude the bulk of their profits, of their reluctance to deal according. The state as a whole is required to issue immediate binding decisions to apply electronic collection on the initiative to use electronic payment tools according to specific and binding time limit. Thus, we draft the sources of corruption, completely achieve large and pure revenues to support the budget without the need for external and internal borrowing. As I mentioned, the banking sector is ready and qualified to implement the project with ease and ease. The electronic payment methods have been published in most of the sites, especially private banks, but most banks still lack the expansion for the use of these technologies at a time. What is required is a government will implement the project in an attempt to catch up to the global banks in the application of the high-end economy, and thus we salute the project focused on the shelves at the time, and it has come time to activate it. Especially Iraq is preparing to receive giant global and local investments. Thus, God willing and promised, agreements have been implemented. So let's see. Deputy Finance intends to borrow again from the central bank's reserves. So a member of the parliamentary committee, Mohammed Sahib, confirms today, Sunday, that the Ministry of Finance wants to borrow again from the central bank's reserves. That's internal borrowing. Al-Durai said in a tweet to him on Twitter, in our hosting of the Minister's Finance planning on September 10th in the House of Representatives about non-compliance with the borrowing law by submitting a reform paper, and they promised to submit a draft by the end of September and a final version that is applicable in mid-October. And so right there, they're telling you guys they wanted to submit a draft by the end of September and a final version in mid-October, guys. They haven't submitted anything. Let me ask you, what's it waiting on? You guys know. You don't have to tell me because you know. He continued for the day, not present. They want to borrow again from central bank's reserve. So as you guys can see there, right there, they're saying they should have had a rough and a final version, a rough version of the reform submitted by the end of September and a final version by mid-October. We haven't seen anything, guys. They haven't even submitted it. It's waiting on something. Even, remember I told you guys that with the 2020 budget, because it has reforms in it, they can't even start it. And as you guys see, that's why this past week was dead quiet in Iraq. And this week we're entering into will also be dead quiet in Iraq, completely silent. You're just going to see jibber jabber. Nothing big in the news is going to come out this week. Then on Saturday, on the 10th, they're going to pass the election law. That's about all you're going to see this week that's of importance. Okay. Again, anything that has to do with the reforms is dependent on the rate change, and that's why as you can see, they're not even starting those items. Okay, they're proving that to you. Based on their actions, it's all getting confirmed. Hey, you guys are the best. Have yourselves a great day. God bless and take care.